If you want something, just go for it. Just ask. 2 feet, as you said. No stepping little toes in the water or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's it.
Howdy. My name's Kyle, and I'm so excited to share this episode with you. This is the interview with Chris Morley, as you'll soon hear me mention, a man with many things going on. Chris is the first year course coordinator at my university. He's also a sole practitioner at his own practice called Echelon Studio, and also the co-chair of the South Australia, let me get this right, Emerging Architects and Graduates Network. I had to read that off the screen because it's kind of gets me sometimes. EmAGN, we call it. Now, this was originally meant to be over an hour long, but there was just so much great content in this one clip, I had to split it up into 3 parts. So if you're watching this on release, thank you so much. But the next couple of episodes will be released over the next couple of days. So make sure you're subscribed and you flick that little bell icon thingy so that you get notified when I post the next ones. And for those time travelers watching this from the future, the links to the next couple of episodes are conveniently in the show notes or in the description below. So you can watch them after this one. All right, let's get straight into it. Got a whole lot of questions, so shall we dig into it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's get started.
Alrighty then. So welcome to the show, Chris. How are you?
Good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. So a quick intro for those listening or watching. This is the Successful Archi Students podcast, episode 40. And I'm here with Chris Morley, a man who's got a lot going on. Chris, can you tell us a bit about yourself and who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I've got to remember you've got an international audience. So, I appreciate that. So, obviously, we're both from Adelaide, South Australia. I studied here. I went to high school here, my last 2 years. Studied here at University of South Australia and have since been a practicing architect here in the state. Outside of practicing architecture, as a sole practitioner, I did a couple of years in a larger practice, but we'll get to that a bit later. And I also tutor at the university, so lecturer and tutor in first year design studio, which is fun, mate. So there's plenty of conversation we can have about that.
Oh, yeah.
And probably the last little bit of my weekly schedule is that I'm the current co-chair for Emerging Architects and Graduates Network here in South Australia. So you're right, a couple of things, but all manageable.
Yeah, that's awesome. So to confirm, you're a sole practitioner, a university course coordinator or tutor, yep. And the co-chair of the, let me get this right, Emerging Architects and Graduates Network of South Australia.
That's it, mate. And
so,
we pronounce it EmAGN.
EmAGN, yeah.
EmAGN, yeah.
Like imagining big. So that's quite a lot you've got going on there, Chris. So the way I've structured this episode, I guess, is to dig into each 3 of these areas of your expertise and hopefully relate your stories and experiences back to help the architecture students listening or watching this episode. So first of all, I want to dig into networking and more specifically the Emerging Architects or let's just call it EmAGN. First of all, what is EmAGN and what is your involvement with it?
Yeah, cool. So as you mentioned, like the involvement there is being the current co-chair. So I've got a wonderful other co-chair who's Tori Clarkson. She's a graduate of architecture and she works here in the state as well. Between the two of us and then a kind of a broader committee, all of us make up a very small portion of what is the graduates and emerging demographic under the Architecture Institute of Australia. So the AIA has a chapter in each state, which is a membership group, and inside that we have the Emerging Architects demographic. So we run a whole series of networking events throughout the year. Some are more socially focused. Adelaide's a great community to kind of have that heightened social side of our networking, which we can touch on. And certainly in the coming years, we're going to have a lot more professional focus in terms of CPD, which is professional development, and part of the requirements of being a registered architect as well. So we try and straddle that, a bit of fun and a bit of kind of professional development and networking in there. So that's us in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So what do you think are some of the benefits to networking as an architecture student? Why do you think it's important?
I was going to say reflection is a wonderful thing. And I know you've got a couple of other questions in here as well, but I was trying to think about how much networking I actually did in my early years as a student. First couple of years probably didn't do very much. I was really just trying to find my feet, understand the uni system, how it works. I wasn't naive to the opportunities that networking can give you. Just didn't really do anything about it. So it was really later on in kind of graduate and now registered architect career where I was doing that. But the benefits of networking, it can be anywhere from a couple of simple conversations and a common interest that you've got with someone that leads to your first part-time job in a practice. And then without getting into too much detail, I don't explicitly network in just the architectural industry, right? I think if you're going to do networking well, it's really about kind of ingraining a reach, so to speak. So sometimes I think it's great to attend events that are outside of your industry. At least then you've got this kind of common chord with the people that are there, and that will then lead to a contact in a completely different industry. And we live and breathe in the built environment and the built world. So there's always someone who's going to need your services. It's about staying kind of front and center. So if you're a student and you can get out and do that early on, absolutely go for it. But certainly everyone's got their own pace that they move at,
That's interesting. So I know you mentioned that you didn't do a whole lot of networking or specifically networking as a student, but is there anything that you did in particular as a graduate or a student, maybe once you graduated and then you started networking with people, or what did this involve?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to highlight as well. As I know we're talking about EmAGN, which is the emerging graduates and architects group. At a student level, there's SONA, which I know you're aware of, and hopefully some of your audience is as well. But SONA is kind of, I don't know, call it your grassroots version of EmAGN. There is a distinct stepping stone through that process. So as a student, you can be engaged at a network level there, and there is this progression that goes through into EmAGN as you get out in the industry. So I think that's important to note. And then for me, some of the small steps in networking that I did at university, it's really about participation. So SONA did have a number of events like Upscale and Super Studio, and they're a great way to kind of do soft networking. People in your industry are there assisting as mentors through that. Everyone's there for a common reason, easy to have a conversation, and don't go into that going, I'm going to get a job out of this. I don't think that's never the approach. It's more about kind of sharing experiences and being seen as a participant, and that goes a really long way.
As a student, though, what do you actually do at networking events? Because, you got these things like Upscale and what was the other one? Super Studio. So What do you actually do there, and how can you make the most of it?
You genuinely have to participate as much as you can. I think it is really about doing that, finding your opportunity to have a little bit of a voice, and the bits that you contribute to, make it known. I think everyone's got something to share in a part of those competitions and processes. So it's really good to be seen, to be doing things, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It goes a really long way. Even if people don't know exactly what you're up to, it's quite easy to see visually those that are heavily engaged in thinking or conversation, even if you're not a part of it. So start by doing that. And obviously step one is that you already signed up to attend the event. So you're halfway through that process anyway. You had the confidence to sign up, so just go in there and kind of muck in and produce some work and have fun while you do it. So
yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just participate. I love that.
Yeah, no, look, I'm an avid believer in that. I don't think even in professional career and running a business, I'm not perfect. I don't think anyone is. We all have our little hiccups here and there. Taking accountability, it goes a long way too.
Yeah, that's massive. I often do see a lot of events for architects, but I'm never too sure if it's an actual event for students as well. So where can students find local events to attend or interact with other students and professionals? And this is talking about a time but without coronavirus.
Yeah, absolutely. So post-COVID or even pre-COVID, both of those situations are more ideal. Part of the reason I got involved with EmAGN is that I was already tutoring at UniSA, and I am a massive advocate and believer for kind of passing on knowledge to kind of the future generations without getting too profound. It makes our job easier, if people coming through are continually having a positive impact on the industry. So I always saw that importance, and I actually think specific student networking events are far and few between. So it's actually something that we've really been trying to work on between SONA and EmAGN, because at least that's a targeted industry-specific networking, I guess. Other things that students can go and look at, and most of them are described anyway in the event details, is that this is a student focus or come and meet the industry type event. So you just got to keep an eye out for them. So SONA publish their own, EmAGN we publish our own. Then you've got other affiliations like Design Institute Australia, DIA. They do a whole bunch of like portfolio review stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I think on the student calendar, you might really only have 3 or 4 networking opportunities a year. So they are pretty scarce. And I'd like to think that, in the years to come, we can kind of get a bit more groundswell in that. And part of that is going to be the students leading the conversation, what they want to attend. And, unlike yourself, everything you're doing about kind of getting this successful architecture student out the door at university, I think, it'd be great to see you be a bit of an advocate for some of these events as well. And I know you do it. So I think, there's some collaboration that can be here in the future between us all. So.
Yeah, sounds wicked.
So absolutely.
Yeah, I think so many great points there, but and it would vary from different countries as well. So that was, I guess, very Australia specific. So for people in other countries, it's just it's just about checking out maybe your local board or something like that and see what events are going on.
Yeah, correct. And thanks for doing that, mate. I will. I've got to be really conscious of the international audience. It really is. I think, every country, every state will have a chapter or an institution or a membership group that people can get involved with. As I mentioned earlier, even, my own networking, it's not explicitly in architecture. Go to an event that's put on by a social club through the university that is outside of your degree, and you just meet a more diverse group of people. And I think that goes a very long way to building your own kind of network. And like I said, it's not, go to an event, get a job or a project day one. This is it's a sustained kind of energy that you need to put into it, and it's kind of a long game, I guess. You build that network and a groundswell, people chatter a little bit and they know who you are and what you do. They come and ask you when they need some help. So
yeah,
whatever
awesome.
You can do at that level. Yeah
I never really thought about just going to networking events outside of architecture as well, so that's something I've learned already. I'll consider that. That's awesome.
I was going to say, I don't want to get off topic either too much. I was talking to an interior designer just the other day about this upcoming interview, and we were discussing networking. And I said, it starts with the guy that runs the coffee shop. To be honest, the amount of people that go past the face of the cafe owner on a daily basis is astronomical from kind of the contact that you would have in a profession, right? You go to the office and you sit with the people but that cafe owner knows thousands and thousands of more people than you. And if you're front and center in their mind, just from, they know your coffee order, so that instead of you ordering, you can actually have a quick chat and see what you've been up to. They know when you're looking for work or, times are a little bit harder, like now, with COVID, and people will spread the word and they kind of support the small business side of things. So the cafe owner start there as well.
That's so big. It just makes me think of how big networking actually gets. Yeah. It's that's massive. Better move on before we get too off topic. But when most people think of networking, they're thinking of dressing up with a drink in their hand and business cards, talking to professionals. But the way we got in contact was actually through social media. And I've noticed this is a tool you've used quite a bit to network, not necessarily just with architects, but as you said, with other people as well in different industries. So could you explain some of the things you do to network using social media?
Yeah, absolutely. I probably have a social media account on most platforms, I guess, both the more social, Instagram and the likes, which you can kind of have that professional tilt to it by having a separate account from your own personal account, which is kind of, advice number one there. But also things like LinkedIn, I use them as a way to stay connected when I need to be. I'm not overly proactive on them. I read a lot. I watch a lot, to be honest. And when I see someone doing something in an area that is of interest to me, if they're more proactive on one medium than the other, I'll contact them there as kind of a cold contact and broach it. And you can certainly always then take the conversation into a more professional medium through emails, phone calls, and certainly face-to-face meetings. So just kind of play your cards, I guess. If for the likes of you, the easiest way to get in contact was through those social media platforms, because even though we, attend the same university probably 3 days a week, the chances of us running past each other were pretty slim. So use it to your advantage, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned that first bit of advice there where you have a separate account for for your professional life, I guess, and then for your personal life. So how do you think architecture students can utilize social media further to build relationships with people in the industry, or since we're on this topic of networking with people outside of the industry as well, for that as well?
Again, it's sounding a little bit like a broken record, but it's all relevant. With the social media stuff, and as a student having a more professional account, I know in the interior architecture program, part of day one at orientation is that we make these suggestions to students that you do create this account. It's a part of an orientation exercise that we do with interior students. And if you maintain that, the universities themselves have quite a public facing social media driven account. So I know Adelaide Uni and UniSA both do that. And they're very supportive of kind of promoting student work and progress. So if you've got an account, more professional, it's active, it's you're recording your own work, you're actually assisting the universities to create essentially digital assets to promote the success of their students. They will then use that content, they'll cross promote, it gets tagged somewhere else, and it kind of just embeds its reach. And no doubt you did part of that process yourself when you were establishing, successful Archie student, I guess. So I would start there, and then there are a lot of professionals that follow those accounts. As you get further through your university degree, if you've been active and you're erring on the side of graduation, I know here in Adelaide, we obviously have a graduation ceremony, but we have an exhibition as well. And at that exhibition, you get the professionals attending, right? So again, it's about familiarity for those people. Yeah, when you're front and center, they should recognize some work or they spark a bit of an interest, and then they'll approach you, I think, is a good way to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. And if a student is meeting a professional for the first time, what are some important things to know or to do to make sure they have a successful first impression?
Oh, goodness. I'm trying to think of all the bad first impressions that I made, really, and kind of it's hindsight. It's hard to come by, but having a little bit of the confidence to really approach people and let them know who you are, good, bad, or indifferent. I was lucky enough, I moved around a lot as a kid with my dad in the army. So, it was quite common for me to just talk to random people and try and find that common thread. It goes a long way when you can do that. But certainly when you're meeting a professional, if you're familiar with the industry enough, so there might be a public piece of architecture that's going up in your city. If you know what's happening around your city, when you meet these professionals cold, even if you don't know their practice or their work, you've got something to talk to them about. And again, show that level of engagement or enthusiasm you have for the industry. And it goes a long way to kind of break the ice.
And you mentioned something there about having confidence, and what just ran through my mind is that people that don't have the confidence, the way that you gain confidence is by just doing it. So
that's it, mate. 2 feet first, just jump in. And particularly while you're younger, there's probably less real risk by just having a go. Sometimes the realities of being a little bit older and having some more responsibility makes you dip a toe in instead of both feet straight away, a habit that I haven't really quite established. Most of the time I go both feet first, which is probably why I do so many things, but I think it goes a long way, right? And again, just doing it more and more often, you just get comfortable with it yourself.
So on this topic of confidence, let's say there's a student going into a networking event alone and they walk in knowing nobody at all. How would you suggest they go about this? My general rule of thumb, and again, this is all just my own opinions, there's no rule book on this. Find the other person in the room that's not talking to anyone. And when you go and talk to them, you're actually doing them a favor, I think. So again, it's showing kind of, if it's care or empathy or interest or whatever you want to label it as, you might not know your territory, but just go and find the other person that doesn't know anyone. I think that's a good place to start. If you've arrived late, right? Not that that's a bad thing, and then sometimes you can't get around it. And then, so normally most people are talking, already, and it's very hard to feel like you can interject. Get the host, whoever's hosting the event should really be able to say, Chris, Kyle, you do this and you do that, and do an introduction for you. I think ask the host to introduce you to someone who's got some common interest with you. And obviously most of these events, they come with a name tag, right? So just go and say, hey, Kyle. It's not too difficult. Yeah, great advice. For the next episode, go click this button in the top corner here. Otherwise, if you want to watch something that YouTube think you'll like, go click this one down here. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon.